va a llegar el gol del Arsenal. Ozil. Marca Mesut Ozil.
Look at him there, sitting on the couch, pretending to care about the Bundesliga. Is that a slice of Black Forest Ghetto? It is! Oh, it doesn't get any more German than that!
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always with James from Gunnerblog. James, good morning to you.
Good morning to you too. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing all right. I'm going to start with a question because it's relevant to this particular part of the podcast.
Okay.
It comes from @Flannyballs, who's only flans on Twitter. Is that where somebody just sells flans? What is
His
that?
account is just him posting flans. Different flans, and that's it.
Okay. Only flans, if that's what you're looking for. Flans, get your flan fix right there. Anyway, he says, how long are you going to keep calling James from Gunnerblog rather than James from The Athletic, James from Horrible Histories, or James from everywhere else? I looked on gunnerblog.com and the last blog is dated 1972. I think he's exaggerating there for comedic effect, but it would be fair to say that it has been some time since you posted something on gunnerblog.com, which I can't load at the moment.
No, I don't. I think it's broken. But I think that I should still be called that. You know, you can take the boy out the blog, but you can't take the blog out of the man or something.
Yeah, it's you've got Gunnerblog DNA. I mean, that's what it comes right down to.
Exactly. Blog till I die. I think stick with it. Otherwise, it just begins to sound, you know, what would you, if you had to change it, what would you say?
Well, that's a good question.
Just James.
James from...
At what point am I James from Arseblog? That's the question.
That's the thing. James from the Arsecast Extra, which is a bit too meta for my liking, a bit too clever, sort of like the podcast version of Inception. You know, nobody needs a backwards podcast where we start at the end and talk about what happened in non-sequential order or whatever you want to call it. We don't need that.
I think, and if you just said, I'm just here with James, I don't think that wouldn't sound as good. Do you know what I mean?
No, it wouldn't, because people would be thinking, well, which James?
You
know, is it? Which James? I mean, it could be like James Gandolfini. No, it couldn't be. Because unfortunately he's dead.
He's no longer with us. Yes.
Yeah, I mean James Bond. They could think it was James Bond. James Corden. Holy shit, we wouldn't want people to think it was James Corden.
James Franco.
Yeah.
I've never been mistaken for him before, I must stress, and I don't think it will ever happen.
No. James Brown. No, that's not going to happen either. He's also dead.
All these famous Jameses are dying.
James Earl Jones. Oh, if it was James Earl Jones, that would be good.
He'd be good on the podcast.
Yeah, he could do the whole, the whole podcast.
The light touches. Yeah. His voice is amazing.
It is.
Is he Darth Vader as well?
Yeah.
Cool.
The voice of Darth Vader, not the actual actor of Darth Vader.
Sure. I think stick with James from Gunnerblog. But listen, I appreciate Flanny Balls sort of querying it. But, I think what we have, we hold. Do you know what I mean? Let's stick with what we've got. It's worked so far.
What about footballers called James? James
Madison.
Oh yeah, that'd be a bit boring, wouldn't it?
Daniel James, of course, one of these guys with two first names.
Suspicious of those people. Always suspicious of those people.
Very, very suspicious. Other footballers called James?
Oh, James Rodriguez. But that's not really James, is it? I'm not going to start calling you James.
No, I do have a Colombia shirt with James on the back, but it looks like I just sort of really fancy myself as a footballer. Do you know what I mean? I've just put like Brazilian style, just put my first name on the back of a shirt.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. Doesn't work.
I've got a cousin who insists on calling me James. I've just remembered that all the time. I don't know why. I don't know if he thinks I'm Spanish or something.
Is he Spanish?
No. Just a little thing he's picked up.
Right. It's a strange affectation, isn't it?
It is. It's weird how, people do that in life.
Okay.
Well, listen, I think from now on you should change it every week.
That puts an awful lot of pressure on me, though, to think of something every week.
None on me. So that's why I suggested it.
Maybe I'll do it for a week or two. and see where it takes me.
Until the football is back.
Yeah, exactly. There could be an awful lot of kickback from people who like things the way they are.
That's
they
true.
don't want change. Enough stuff has been changed recently without us fucking around for no good reason, but who knows? We'll see.
That's it. We need to give people some consistency.
Exactly.
Go on. By the way, I saw your tweet not long ago about sound quality and television broadcasts. And I thought I've got to ask you about that.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I was watching a video this morning, and just let me be clear, this is not to be in any way critical of David Jones on Sky, who's doing an interview with Paul Merson, which I was watching, and I was enjoying the interview, and it was Paul Merson opening up about stuff, and that's grand. But I don't understand why the presenters on Sky don't have a good microphone, because I think it's one thing if your guest is a little bit, Skypey. So you sort of, you're here and you go, so how did you feel about that? And then the guest answers going, well, it's fine. That's fine. I think we can all get our heads around the fact that, as a guest on a show, if you're recording on your phone or your laptop or your tablet, you're not going to have the greatest sound quality in the world. But for a big broadcaster like Sky not to give their presenters a microphone which allows them to, broadcast in broadcast quality, if you like, is really strange to me. It's annoying. You will know, and people will know, I've got a bit of a hang-up about sound quality. I like to make sure it's as good as it can possibly be. And I think, at my end, I've got a microphone which cost, I think, around €400, a Shure SM7B microphone. That's not even expensive in the world of microphones, let me tell you. It is not that expensive. You have got a Rode USB microphone, which I think cost in the region of 120, 140 euros or pounds or something like that. Sound quality is really good. I don't get why Sky are compromising sound quality on their broadcasts for no good reason. Although some people have suggested that it's like product placement for AirPods because they all wear the Apple AirPods. So it could be that, but I still don't think that's a good enough reason.
Let me just say, if I texted you before the show and said, just letting you know, I'm going to be doing the Arsecast with my AirPods today, you would not be happy with me at all.
No, I wouldn't. We would.
Yeah, I think
we would.
There
have
would
crosswords.
be no James from Gunnerblog.
Yeah, exactly. I'd just get any random James I could find who had a decent microphone. I'd chat with them instead.
No, it is interesting. I mean, you'd think the first thing you would have done. In fact, one of the first things the Athletic did, I think, when all this happened, was they sent everybody mics. I had one already, fortunately, but that's what you do, isn't it? You give people equipment so they can do this stuff properly. It is weird.
It is weird because I think, like I said, there's a difference between the presenter and guests.
Do you think they are making a call that they like the visual of sort of, they're not seeing a mic in the frame, and it just looks like person to person? Do they think they're putting the visual above the audio?
Could well be, but I still think you can have the visual without compromising the audio, because you could have a microphone out of shot because they're fairly close up and it could be sitting on the desk in front of you.
Could be attached to the camera. Could be anyway.
Yeah, exactly. You can have a good USB microphone that plugs into a laptop and just sits in front of the presenter. And I don't know why they're doing it.
Just to annoy you.
Just to annoy me. Well, look, congratulations to them. It's working. You win again, Sky. God damn you. So tell me this.
Yes.
On the weekend that football returned, did you watch any football?
I watched a little bit of football. I watched some of the Dortmund game on Saturday. But I was painting some walls and I was watching it on a phone. So my focus was very in and out. I saw Haaland score that good goal. And he's kind of like a scary robot footballer.
We have another question on that. We might as well do it, seeing as it's come up in the questions here. It comes from Facebook from Joel Abraham, who says, "What do you think of Haaland's crap interviews?" where basically he's been asked by the guy, well, you scored today, how do you feel? And he went, very good. And these sort of short replies which don't expand on how he's feeling, which I have to say, look, he looks a bit sort of evil.
Sure, like a cyborg.
Kind of like a cyborg, but I kind of, what are you supposed to say when someone says, how do you feel? Yeah, it's good. I scored a goal. I feel good. Maybe he is trying to raise broadcasting and journalistic standards by making the presenters think more about the kind of questions that they ask in post-match interviews, which really, when you think about it, only lend themselves to bullshit answers. How do you feel about scoring a goal? Yeah, pretty good. Obviously, the most important thing is that the team won and we got the 3 points. But, on a personal level, I feel very good about scoring the goal, blah, blah, blah. And it's like 20, 30 seconds of waffle that nobody needs. And he's saving us all time by just going, yeah, feel good.
Exactly. Someone's got to transcribe that stuff at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Save someone a job. Maybe these guys are coming at him wearing AirPods and he's like, come back when you got a proper microphone, you bastard.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, it is a bit like he has sort of been programmed by like a really lazy coder and they've just only put in, a few standard responses to stuff. But I quite like it too. I mean, yeah, I think it's fine. I think, you've seen some journalists probably tweeting about it on the timeline, and there's a sort of slight sense of, he needs to learn that the press, are part of this. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really. Like, you don't have to talk to the media to be good at football. It's nice if you open up and want to show a bit more personality, but it's not an obligation, really, I don't think.
No.
I mean, he's entitled to do whatever he wants.
Exactly. He's not there to make life easy for a journalist or a broadcaster. I mean, I think if he was being really rude or what have you, and some people might argue that just giving a 2-word answer to a 30-second question is quite rude. But, it is a case that they ask the same questions a lot of the time and they just don't need much more of an answer than the ones that he's giving. So maybe it might just make people think a little bit differently. So
yeah, and also, like, what we don't want is people just saying the same thing again and again and again. And even if what he's doing is a bit brusque or a bit rude, at least it's different. And I think it's kind of tells you more about him as a person than him just saying, yeah, obviously it was a tough game, but we pulled through in the end. The lads really worked. Do you know what I mean? Like, we learn more from him being a bit of a dick about it than we otherwise would. And that's great.
Yeah. So anyway, he scored for Dortmund. I didn't see any of the Dortmund-Schalke game at all. I watched some of the highlights. I saw the goal clips after the fact. And
you watched Bayern, did you, on Sunday?
Yeah, I watched FC Union Berlin against Bayern Munich. Of course, I was up for the team in red, which were not Bayern Munich. It was the team from Berlin, who I've kind of chosen as my Bundesliga team until Arsenal come back.
Okay.
Not for any particular reason other than they seem okay. And I asked our friends over at the Stadio podcast, Musa and Ryan, who are at Stadio, is this a reasonable team to support? Are there any sort of problematic issues with supporting them? Like, are they, for example, sponsored by a massive, disgustingly sweet energy drink and things like that?
Sure.
They're not. And they seem to play some decent football. They've got some good players, played okay against Bayern. I thought they, obviously were up against a better team, but they weren't completely outclassed or anything like it. But Bayern won in the end. So that's a bit disappointing. But, it's not like Arsenal losing or anything like that, but just to sort of give it a little bit of interest, it's nice to have a team that you can follow. But it was a strange sort of experience. It was weird. Obviously, the weirdest thing is the lack of fans, and that
although the socially distanced goal celebrations are also quite weird.
They are a little bit, because you can see that they're forgetting themselves at times as well. And I think it was after Lewandowski scored his penalty, I was going, why are they all doing chicken impressions? What's going on with the chicken shit? And they're all sort of going cluck, 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 and like waggling their elbows at each other. And then I was like, oh yes, of course, because there's no sort of jumping around and hugging and kissing and all that kind of stuff. And for me, that's a good development in football terms. My feelings on celebrations. I feel like really any goal that isn't a last minute winner in a crunch game shouldn't be celebrated with anything other than just sort of a handshake and a sort of nod of the head and yes, that was good, let's get on with it. There's a game to play here, chaps. Let's not go overboard with the celebrations. Like you score in the first minute and there's a pylon in the corner. Get the fuck up. Come on, they've got 89 minutes to stick 7 goals past you, and then how much of a chump do you look? So, that's an interesting development. The shouting and the noises and all that kind of stuff will be interesting when the Premier League returns, particularly when we can hear what they're saying.
Yeah, my German really isn't good enough to make head nor tail of what they're saying. But it will be fascinating. I mean, there was a lot of talk about pumped-in crowd noise, but we didn't really get that, did we, in the Bundesliga?
I thought when I was watching the highlights of the Leipzig game, Leipzig were playing Freiburg.
Okay.
And I'm almost certain that when Leipzig scored, there was kind of pumped-in cheering.
Well, there definitely was still pumped in goal music, which in a silent crowd I think is almost all the more offensive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When they sort of like play a pop song when the ball hits the net.
Yes, that's not good. That is not good.
But it was weird. It was... Yeah, I feel like anyone who said it was weird at the weekend sort of got a bit jumped on in terms of people going, yeah, well, it's better than nothing, and they're doing their best, and I completely get that. It's a real feat to be having sport of any kind on at the moment, and I appreciated it, but it is really different. It's really different as a viewing experience. But yeah,
it is. Look, because I'm sort of detached from it anyway, and I was looking at a game of football just because we haven't had a game of football in whatever it is 2.5 months. It was really nice just to sit down, and my dad had come down for dinner, so we were just sort of chatting on and off about the game and the players and the way that it went.
Yeah.
But you are detached from it because it's not a team that I support, it's not a league I'm invested in, etc. I wonder, will it be better or weirder when it involves Arsenal?
Yes, I don't know. I think it probably will be weirder because that kind of emotion won't be as present in the game. It will be weirder. But equally, it will be more engaging to watch because you care about the team more and you know the players more. So maybe it'll be all the more interesting because you'll notice things you don't normally notice or hear things, as we were saying, you don't ordinarily hear. Yeah, I kind of feel like it might be more interesting, but less emotive, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, are the things that we find interesting in the first couple of games, will they become quite dull and boring? It's like,
novelty.
Listen, we can hear what they're saying, and then it'll be like, oh God, I wish we couldn't hear what they're saying.
I know.
Wish we couldn't.
Turns out they're just saying switch again and again.
Yeah. Man on! Or there'll be somebody with like a really annoying, screechy voice. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be an Arsenal player, but, there's going to be somebody in the Premier League who's got that kind of like, that kind of voice when they're shouting, and it will become very annoying.
Harry Maguire does a lot of talking. I think he'd have to be a candidate for that. He's very vocal on the football pitch. You can almost hear him when there is a crowd. So, yeah, that might be great after a while.
Right.
Listen, it's football, Clive, but not as we know it.
Not as we know it. I thought what was quite interesting was the fact that Bayern were on top, I suppose, for most of the game and did have good attacking moments and came close to scoring. And it just strikes me that if you can get your goal scoring going quickly, you can probably think positively about what you're going to do when football comes back, because there is going to be an element of rustiness. There is going to be an element of the fact players haven't played together for such a long time. I was sort of surprised by the technical level of the games. It's not that football players are just going to when the ball comes to them, it's going to bounce off them like it does a Sunday League player, But, it has been a couple of months, and it's going to be another month anyway, more or less, isn't it, before the Premier League returns. So you're looking at 3 months, 3.5 months without playing any competitive football. It is going to have an impact on the way teams play. It's going to take them a while to get up to speed, match fitness, match sharpness, sort of knowing where people are and everything else. So I do wonder if there's going to be something for coaches to think about, like, okay, are we going to be a bit flaky defensively? Is it going to take a while to, maintain our structure and shape and organisation? But if we can get our goal scorers scoring, we could pick up points. Interesting to think about what way the managers are going to think about how they rebuild their teams, if you like.
Yeah, and I think with particular opponents to Arsenal, because, we have goal scorers, don't we? That's something where, we've got people who, if they can fire, could give us a little bit of an advantage there. I think another thing to consider is, what impact the fitness of the players has on the way these games play out. I think I saw a stat there were 8 muscle injuries in the 6 Bundesliga games, which is a relatively high ratio. And I think there'll be some of that probably in England too.
I saw them using the subs. They used Union. I think used all 5 subs. Maybe I could be wrong, but it was like, they're making another change.
I think minutes will have to be shared. There weren't many upsets in Germany this weekend, and somebody sent us a question. I'm sorry, you'll have to forgive me, I've not got it in front of me, but they were saying, do we think that the games might go a bit more like that? Here you go. Johnny Bowden said, hope you're well, chaps. With very few surprise results in the Bundesliga this weekend, do you think behind closed doors games will throw less surprise results and we'll just see the best teams win every week without fans and atmosphere having any effect?
Maybe. I mean, I think it's too small a sample size to say definitively, isn't it? To try and look at any trends. But yeah, I mean, we did have a discussion about this, didn't we? About home advantage and what have you. And I think there was another question here from our Discord from Matt JD, who says, will Mike Dean's one-man show still function without an audience? Says, I know Andrew doesn't think the absence of home fans for our away games will have much effect on the players' performance, but do you think the lack of majority support for the home team will affect the referee? And that's a really interesting point, because I thought about that yesterday. There were a couple of moments where there were some tackles and the referee gave free kicks to Bayern or whatever it might be, and a couple of them were maybe 50-50, and I just wondered, like, if the home fans were there making noise, and like, let's say he still gave the free kick to Bayern Munich, but the home fans went crazy, at the referee for giving a decision which they disagreed with. Is that something that referees completely block out? I know they will say they're not influenced by the crowd at all, etc., but it may well have an impact when the crowd is going crazy at decisions that you make. Eventually you give a free kick to the home team and the cheer, ironic cheers and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder if that might be a factor.
I think it might well iron out some of those intangibles, and you might see a bit more of an objective contest, and the better teams might be the ones who come to the fore. Another thing that just struck me then, as you were chatting about the absence of crowds, is you do occasionally hear about Premier League players who, they're great in training, but when they get to game time, sometimes they don't psychologically quite make that step. And I wonder if there'll be certain players who might flourish in this environment because it will feel weirdly like a training session, and they might feel more comfortable. They might feel more at home. Maybe particularly younger players, who aren't used to playing in that kind of intense atmosphere. I do wonder if it might in some ways be easier for them. So that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there is that dynamic, isn't there, where maybe you can feel intimidated by a crowd, whether it's even as a home player, you might feel nervous in front of all those fans. I do think, generally speaking, though, most players, when they get to this level, are not necessarily able to block it out, but it's just part and parcel of the theatre. Once you've played a few games, do you even think about how many people are watching? Because if you even stop to think about it, okay, there's 60,000 people in the stadium here, and there are tens, if not hundreds of millions of people around the world watching me play football right now. I mean, if that's in your brain before you go out to play a game of football, you'd be like, oh, fuck.
You couldn't. I mean, it's almost too big to compute, isn't it? But, funnily enough, I had a chat with a former Arsenal player from the 90s, Paolo Venazza, and he was saying, so I thought was really interesting, was that he found it easier to play in the Premier League because the crowd just kind of blends into one. It's sort of an amorphous mass. But when he went down the divisions and played sort of League Two and conference football, and you can see the individual faces of the people behind the goal or hear the things they actually shout at you, he found that a lot harder. So yeah, I think at the top level, you might be right. It might just be sort of something that kind of blurs into one a bit and that you don't really take that much notice of.
Here's another question from the Discord, which is from Chifinho, who is talking about things that are often brought in as temporary measures, but then never removed. And he said, which is likely more likely to remain in a post-COVID world, 5 subs or the removal of the blackout window, which is a rule in the UK which says that no live football can be broadcast, transmitted on a Saturday afternoon between 3 and 5, because traditionally those were the times when people went to games and they wanted to make sure that there was no disincentive, to local teams or whatever. So if you could sit at home and watch a game on TV, this was the thinking anyway, you wouldn't go to a game and pay a ticket and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think there's every chance that both of those are here to stay. It's just one of those things where when things change, it feels unlikely they'll go back. We've got a thing in London at the moment where they're about to change the congestion charge, which you pay to drive into town, from being a 5-day thing to a 7-day thing, and they're saying it's temporary because of coronavirus. But I suspect for a number of reasons, some of them good and valid, it might well just stay that way. And I kind of think it will be the same with football. I think once managers have got used to the prospect of having 5 subs, and once players have got used to all those extra minutes they might not otherwise get, I kind of feel like reverting from that will actually probably encounter a bit of resistance. And as for the TV, I mean, there's an obvious advantage to clubs, particularly Premier League clubs, in being able to theoretically stream or broadcast any of their games. So I think they'd be delighted to see the back of that.
Yeah, there's an interesting piece in the Irish Times today from Ken Early of Second Captains, who makes a really interesting point about football as a TV show now, which is basically what it is. As long as fans are not allowed in stadiums, football is a TV show. Now, why are football matches traditionally played at the weekends? Because it's when people are off work, when people are able to go to football matches. As long as they're not allowed to go to football matches, what is the advantage to football of having games broadcast at, let's say, non-prime time hours of the day or at the weekends? Saturday afternoon is the typical time when people are out doing other things, or they're, doing stuff around the house or out with the family and those kind of stuff, things, So we think about what football might be like and the changes that might take place to the game. But I wonder if at some point they start tinkering with the calendar, with the schedule, with the traditional kickoff times. And I know that it's not the same anymore because football is taking place, all across the weekends. Premier League games don't all take place on a Saturday at 3 p.m. like they used to. Even with that in mind, I wonder if there might well be some changes or some pressure from broadcasters who are not getting quite the value that they thought they were going to get from the money they're spending on the rights to show football because there's no fans, if they might leverage the money that they're paying to try and move these games to times when you might attract a bigger audience. Yeah,
very possibly. I mean, the calendar for what remains of this season, assuming it goes ahead, which I think is likely at this stage, is not going to look anything like an ordinary football schedule. And I think the same crucially will be the case for next season as well. And I just think after 18 months of that, or a year of that, however long it might be, I just think it's quite unlikely that we revert to some of the traditions and habits that we've sort of had in place before. I think some of these changes will be permanent. Obviously not having fans in the stadium. I think obviously the sooner that problem can be resolved, safely, the better. But I think some of these things around the game, definitely. What do you think about the 5 subs one?
I think it's perfectly okay. I like the fact that you still only have 3, or what is it? 3 chances plus half-time to make changes. So I think that's good. So if you were stopping, if you could make a stoppage for each substitution, I don't think that's the game doesn't need that. But I think having the ability to change more players, I think is okay. And I think we talked about this the other week, didn't we? About a change that we might make to the game is the idea that if somebody is concussed, if they get a head injury, because football does need to deal with concussion more seriously. I know things have improved over the last little while, but as a rule, I think it can do better. So if you can replace a player who picks up a head injury, without it costing you one of your subs, I think that would be a decent idea. Maybe it's not quite as pressing if you can make 5 subs.
Right.
If a head injury costs you one of 3 subs, it's more damaging. One of 5 subs, not quite so much. But yeah, I think it's okay. I think it might make for really interesting final 20 minutes of games. Because you can introduce fresh legs, you can introduce new tactical ideas. I wonder if, as well, it might lead to a kind of specialization of certain players and certain individuals, if you like.
Super subs.
Kinda, yeah. So let's say you've 20 minutes to go and you're losing 2-0. You need to attack, so maybe there's the classic example is you stick on the big man up front and you lump the ball into the opposition box. But what if you put a big guy up front, but you also put on a player who is let's say a set piece special, or really good at crossing the ball from deep within the opposition half, so you don't have to get to the byline. You've got somebody who can put in a good cross from just inside the opposition half. I wonder if there might be developments in player skills because of those extra substitutions.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Like within the Arsenal squad, is there anyone who you're like, there's a potential role for them as a kind of 20-minute specialist?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would depend. I mean, even it could be something like somebody who can throw the ball long, like a Rory Delap type
Rory
thing.
Delap
It doesn't have to be something magical, but I mean, again, you might get players who are good at running at players who are good dribblers. Even if you're winning a game and the opposition is having to come on to you, do you throw on your speed merchants to hit them on the counter attack? All of these things could be developments that happen because you can use 5 subs.
Yeah, I think that's potentially really exciting. I mean, one objection I've seen mounted to it is that it might favour big clubs because they have more squad depth available to them. Do you think there's anything to that argument?
I suppose, but everybody has the same size squad. But if you can, maybe for the bigger clubs, the quality across, their squad is probably higher, isn't it? So if you're a smaller club, you might have a first 11 or a first 14 that can realistically compete. But once you go beyond that, your subs aren't quite as at the same level. But again, maybe it's about upskilling, if you like, or training certain players to be effective as substitutes. That's a mind fuck for some players, maybe, or it might take a change of mindset, if you like.
Well, Giroud was brilliant at it, wasn't he? I mean,
he was an effective sub, yeah.
Yeah, like he was he showed himself to almost be a specialist in that, being able to affect games coming on late, and certain players can, certain players really, really can't. I think one of the exciting things about 5 subs, maybe it's just because of Arsenal and the squad we have and the amount of young players we have, but it's the development opportunities that open up. Suddenly, if you bring Reece Nelson along, your 7 subs, it's not like, he's not got a great chance of being used. He's going to get on the pitch probably. And that might be valuable to his development.
Yeah, think about how many times this season we've bemoaned the fact that we haven't been able to use a particular sub because we've picked up an injury in the first half, or we've had games where we've had a couple of injuries, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden the manager is restricted in terms of the changes that he can make. You've got players on the bench who could have a positive impact on the game, but you can't use them because you've had to make a sub because a player has picked up a knock or because somebody's been sent off. That kind of thing where we've had a central defender sent off. We're going to have to put a defender on. And maybe, one of the most interesting results this season came when we didn't go down that route. If you think about what happened to Chelsea when Luiz got sent off, we didn't put on a defensive sub, and it paid dividends for us. But I think giving managers a bit more to work with in that regard would certainly be very interesting, and we'll see. It might make substitutions even more important in a game, and therefore the ability to read a game, the ability to look at what you've got on the bench and try and figure out new tactical elements to your play. Like if the players know, right, in this scenario, we're 2-0 down, we need goals, this is what we're going to do, and you can train for that kind of thing, it could be really interesting.
Yeah. I personally have no objections to it. I think it's a good development, and I think it will be here to stay.
Okay, well, look, we've waffled for over half an hour, and there are plenty more questions, and there's obviously...
we've got to talk about Unai.
We've got to talk Unai. We've got to talk about the interview that he did. So let's take a break here. People can get a cup of tea or whatever they want to do, or continue their walk, or just keep listening, and we'll take a break. That's what we'll do. We'll take the break. You guys keep listening, and we'll do your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from The Athletic. Sorry, wrong bit. Got it wrong there. This is part 2 of the show, where we answer the questions that you send to us via the Horrible Histories Twitter account. No, I'm just kidding. On Twitter, at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog, on the Arseblog Facebook page, facebook.com/the Arseblog, and, of course, on the Discord channel of The Boxer, James's one-man show, which you can see this year in the West End. No, on the Discord channel, you get access to if you're an Arseblog member on Patreon. I just want to, before we go on with questions, James, I just want to put the microphone thing for Sky presenters into context here. Now, you know the microphones that commentators use. And I don't mean the headsets, the ones that the headset with the mic that comes around the side, the one where they kind of hold it up to their mouth. It's like a handheld thing. Those microphones are made by a company called, I think it's Coles, and they cost in the region of €700 each. Right. €700 each. Now, in this day and age, when football comes back, they're all going to have their own ones, because you wouldn't be able to share one.
That's true.
With somebody. I'm sure I've said this before, but I've done voiceover work down the years for Setanta Sports. And a lot of the games, you think the commentator is there. He is not there. He's sitting in a room and he's watching it on a monitor, not even a big screen TV. A lot of the time it's these weird square monitors. And the room where I did the voiceovers in Setanta Sports was one of those rooms where the guys would watch like French Liga, or they'd watch Bundesliga, and they would commentate as if they were at the games, etc., etc. And one of the microphones was usually there. It was disgusting. Disgusting. Like, imagine.
In what way?
Okay. You wear headphones, I'm sure. Earphones, everyone wears the earphones that you put in your ears. And every so often you take them out and you look at them and you go like, okay, I need to like clean them out a little bit, right?
Of course.
You know, that kind of thing. But imagine that with, I don't know, 4 or 8 years of spittle. Yeah. And they're just kind of sitting there, and the next guy comes up and he might give it a wipe with a Kleenex or whatever, but they talk into them. Anyway, point was, those microphones are about €700 each. And, we're supposed to believe that Sky Sports can't go out and spend €100 on a fucking Blue Yeti? Come on.
I mean, it's crazy. But, I'm sorry, I'm really distracted by how horrific those microphones sound. Awful. Yeah. I mean, they got to go. Surely, so do you think they'll get cheaper mics for people? Now they've all got to have one of their own?
I don't know.
Can they?
No.
They can't just be sat in the commentary booth with their AirPods in, can they?
No, they can't, because pick up too much noise. The point about those microphones is that it's got this kind of lip that goes over your top lip, and so you're speaking directly into it like this, and it's blocking out all the noise, which is why it would take somebody with an exceptionally loud voice sitting behind you for you to be able to pick up something on the broadcast. If that were to happen, I don't know any occasion on which that has happened.
Okay.
But just, or some of them do. They have they've got the headphones with the microphone that comes around the front, but they're not quite as enclosed, and you can probably pick up stuff from those microphones much more than the actual the handheld commentator microphones. Anyway, look, I'm leaving that to one side. I'm over it already until next time.
Sure.
Peter Hust, who's at Peter Hust, wants to know, morning, gents, what's your take on the Unai Emery interview? Was he treated badly? Or is he just trying to blame everybody else?
Well, I feel like I should bat this immediately back to you, because I feel like you will have a very strong opinion on this.
Well, I wrote about it a bit at the weekend on the blog, and I thought that the whole Zaha thing was just so summed up everything about the Unai Emery era, and not just Unai Emery, but the way the club operate and the way that the football side of the club is run. We have this manager who's brought in by Sanyehi, basically, is given this huge amount of support even when things were going terribly. But in the summer, where he said, look, I really want this player. This is the player that I want. I want a right-footed guy with Premier League experience to play on the left-hand side. This is the guy. I've met with him. He's a game winner. Whether that's true or not is another thing, but that's what Emery wanted, and Arsenal went out and did something completely different. Completely different. And it's not to sort of say, that signing Pepe wasn't a better idea than signing Zaha. It's not really about that, because everyone has their own opinions on the players, and whether 80 million for Zaha would have been better than 72 million pounds on Pepe. People can meet up in the town square when all this is over, and they can have at it. They can have a big debate about that. It's not
fight
really
to
fight to the death, whatever you do, or even just, discuss it calmly and rationally over a beer, whatever way you want to do it. I like the way your mind went straight to, conflict and death. Maybe that says a lot about you, James. I'm not passing any judgments here. I'm just saying
the times we're living in.
But just is it any wonder that it was a fucking mess when Emery wanted this and the club gave him something basically the opposite?
That's a really good point. Sort of irrespective of whether the club got it right or wrong, I think.
Yeah.
It just shows a bit of what's the word? Dysfunction, I think.
Yeah, that's not harmonious recruitment. That's not a harmonious recruitment strategy where the manager says, this is what I want, and the club goes, okay, well, we'll get you that. And even if he couldn't get Zaha, if that's the player he wants, get him a player for that position. If you're backing him, if you're really truly backing your manager, which, they insisted they were. They insisted, even when shit was going down the tubes, they were fucking briefing through back channels about how fans were making noise and it was all this, that and the other. They were right behind him, but they couldn't get him the player he wanted or a player in that. Maybe
they felt so guilty that they hadn't got him Zaha, that they were like, we can't sack him. Don't you remember the whole Wilfried Zaha thing? He was so sad about that. So what I think about the Emery thing is I've been waiting for it. It was kind of inevitable that sooner or later he was going to come out and do a piece where he said it wasn't really entirely my fault because it's almost his professional obligation to do that, and I found it really telling actually that at the end he kind of says, well, Real Sociedad is the club of my heart, and if there is a club in the Premier League, I would be interested in that opportunity. It's basically a pitch for a new job.
Hey,
isn't
why
it?
not? Look, I sort of had no issues about it from that point of view.
Yeah.
He is going to tell his side of the story. And I think it is, fair to say that it wasn't all his fault. Like, it didn't work for him. He wasn't good enough. What he did wasn't good enough. But as we kept saying on the podcast, he can't be the only one to blame, for what's happened. And, realistically, you can point to the fact that, we took a slide when Emery took over. You could also point to the fact that we took a slide as soon as Raul Sanllehi took over as head of football. Ultimately, who's responsible?
Well, I mean, something that Emery did bring up, and I think that probably we don't talk about enough, really, which, given the amount of shit we talk about here, is kind of amazing. But the Aaron Ramsey situation and the management of that, I think, is still a very curious one, isn't it? And I find it very difficult to believe that was something in which Emery had any real influence, to be honest with you.
No, I don't think so. Although, he did come in and tell Jack Wilshere, you're not in my plans, you should find a new club. So, he did have some strong opinions about players from the start. Look,
but he was very positive about Ramsey in that early period as well. By the same token, he was talking about building the team around him and stuff like that in July. Yeah.
Look, again, it feels like a lot of water has gone under the bridge, and he talked about we lost 4 captains, but I mean, again, that reflects badly on Emery. It reflects badly on the club as well. Like, how is it? Your inability to pick a captain and make a decision about a captain, and we saw what happened with Xhaka and the consequences of playing out that decision for so long, and what an impact they had on the sentiment and everything else. But like, to lose 1 captain is careless. To lose 2, etc., etc. You know what I mean? If you lose 4, what the fuck is going on? And
that's Arsenal, baby.
That's Arsenal, baby. I think you can look at Emery and say, well, look, you played your part in this, but the club itself as well have got to take some responsibility in the fact that, okay, we lost our captain, the official captain in Lauren Koscielny, but, look at the way we lost him. Look at the way we lost Lauren Koscielny, a guy who had for 9 years, played with courage and commitment and dedication and put his face and ghoulies and, everything else on the line for the football club.
Achilles.
His Achilles and everything else. The idea that you could question the commitment of Lauren Koscielny would have seemed unthinkable. And then on the eve of the US tour, he says, no, fuck it, I can't. I'm going to go down this road, which I know is going to absolutely set fire to my relationship with the fans and my legacy at the football club for a period of time. Maybe in time it'll soften and everything else. But that's what he was willing to do, to get out of the football club. That speaks badly of Emery. It speaks badly of the people running the football club. I thought the idea that, I didn't want to lose Nacho Monreal. Well, why did you? Why did we? Why did we lose Nacho Monreal for £250,000? Weird, fucked up decisions. And I think, for me, it just laid bare the stuff we already knew about Emery, not being the right guy and not being, performing and doing as well as we wanted a manager to do. But I think it just sort of, it really gave you an idea that there was a bigger picture, a wider context to why it was he was, a failure.
Yeah, personally, I think that Monreal decision was a really questionable one. I think, especially given that we were looking to move towards a back 4. We had Kolasinac, who's not really comfortable in a back 4. I know the subsequent emergence of Saka cast a slightly different light on it, but before he came along, there was a period where we were really struggling in that area. And yeah, I read what you wrote about the Zaha thing, and it's really interesting, and I think people should go and check it out if they haven't yet. What it made me reflect on is that kind of Emery wanting Zaha I think shows Emery for what he is, which is a guy who was very focused on the short term, on the immediate term. He just wanted the best team right now. And actually, I think that's kind of why he was appointed, because Arsenal, for the last, 2 or 3 years, have been fixated on a very short-term way of thinking. I mean, going right back to, Raul Sanllehi's, I think, first transfer window at the club was maybe January 2018 when they bought Mkhitaryan and Aubameyang.
To be fair, I think that was more Gazidis than Sanllehi, who wasn't appointed until the end of that January, or, maybe he had an influence,
Sure.
but I don't think we can put that one on Raul.
Okay, that's fair enough. But nevertheless, I think the club strategy was very clearly get back in the Champions League as soon as they can. Mm-hmm. And there were other signings like Socrates, which I say, would go into that bracket too. And I think appointing Emery as well was part of that. It was this sense of, we're just going to spend what we need to get back in the Champions League immediately, as soon as is possible. We've got all these players who are 29, 30, getting Mesut Ozil a new contract. And so that's why when the club turn around now and they say, well, we're a Europa League team on a Champions League wage budget, I feel like sometimes volleying back, well, that is the wage budget that strategically you placed us on because, you felt it was the right thing for us to try and get back in the Champions League as quickly as possible. I know a lot of that lies at the previous regime's door, as you just mentioned, Armin Gazidis. But, that was the strategy of the club, and Emery was always a short-term guy, and he was looking for short-term solutions, and that's what Zaha would have been. What's really interesting now is that, kind of by hook or by crook, by virtue of it going so wrong for Emery and a fucking global economic financial crisis, we are forced, whether or not it was the mastermind move of anybody at the club, into a very different way of thinking, aren't we? Where suddenly it's not about what we can spend to fix the problem immediately. We've got a young manager who's developing and young players that we have to develop for lack of alternative, basically.
I think the other thing about the Zaha or Emery's desire to sign Zaha is it also sums him up in a way, isn't it? In that it's extremely reactive. It doesn't feel like Zaha is a player that Emery said, well, I really think this guy's a good player. I'll watch him lots of times. It's sort of like, oh, look what he did to us. And I saw him score a goal against Tottenham, and I saw him score a goal against Man City or whatever it might have been. It doesn't feel like it was the result of, a long time thinking this is a really good player who could fit well into the kind of football that I want to play at Arsenal. It was like, well, he hurt us and he hurt a couple of other teams. I like that.
I used to play Championship Manager like that. If a guy scored against me, I'd be like, well, I'll buy him. And then he won't do it next time. But I'm not sure it works like that in real life.
Imagine if that's how it worked. Like, somebody paying, got to pay £28 million for Neil Mellor. Look at that goal he scored against Arsenal. And
I seem to remember Man United had a bit of a spell of that, where they signed a couple of players. Louis Zaha, although he was a very decent signing, he was particularly brilliant against Man U, and then they went and bought him. But I think, I'm one of the few people who probably thinks Zaha might well have been better than Pepe this season. I think there's a very good chance of that.
Even though he hasn't been brilliant, in fairness.
No, of course. He's been injured and he's been at Palace. But I think there's every chance he would have been better this season. But, of course, you're not just making the decision on what's right for this season. Emery was, because he had his back to the wall pretty much from the spring. And, it all went wrong for him. But it was, I'm trying to think of anything else that he touched on. What did you make of his comments about Mesut Ozil?
Well, I think, you don't have to read between the lines too much. Like, he's not going to come out and blast Mesut Ozil because, I don't know that does him any good when he's looking for a new job. But
he's already lost that PR battle once.
Yeah, I think the fact that one of the first things that's mentioned in the interview is that after Baku, which again, he kind of glosses over. There's a lot of questions to be asked about our preparations for Baku and the way that we, did our Europa League final preparations, something that, he won't acknowledge, but behind the scenes, I'm not sure it was ideal from the player's point of view. And when you lose a final 4-1, you can understand, their point of view. But the first thing basically that he says, or is in the interview, is that after the final, there was a debrief and every single player turned up apart from Mesut Ozil. So that says a lot about the relationship that the two men had. I think it says something, whether you're a fan of Emery or you're not a fan of Emery or whatever else, if everyone else is doing something and you as the highest paid player don't turn up to do it, it doesn't reflect well on you, I don't think.
No, it's not. It's not great. But yeah, I mean, look, it was an interesting read. Let's put it like that. I think he says that he has an element of self-criticism. It's not particularly present in the piece, but nor would I massively expect it to be.
Yeah, look, I think he's trying to paint the best picture of, his time at the club because he knows other people will be reading and it's about getting out there and getting another job somewhere. So, if you can look at it through that context or through that lens, you can understand, where he's coming from, even if it's relatively easy to pick apart. But look, I think we've done too much on Unai Emery in that particular interview. So let's have another question, will we?
Let's have another question. Good idea. Okay, I've got my little list here. Okay, yeah, what about this from Mark Morrow? If the rest of this season is to be played out in some sort of behind closed doors crap fest, you can trademark that, Mark, would you be happy if Arsenal treated it as a pre-season for next season and trialled some new players, tactics, formations, etc.?
I think I would, to be honest, because I'm not sure what European football is going to be like, whether it's an aspiration that's realistic or not.
That's a really good point, yeah.
So I wonder if... See, it would depend on what they do. If European competitions are, let's say, suspended until the following season,
yeah,
does your qualification for those come from what happens this season? That might be part of the thinking, so you can't necessarily throw in the towel. But, if we were to give more chances and more opportunities to young players, I would be all for it because I do think that is where the future of the team lies. I think there are going to be big issues with recruitment in terms of what we can afford, and again it really hinges on what the market is going to be like. I think everyone accepts that our spending power and everyone else's spending power, bar one or two clubs, is going to be diminished significantly.
Oh, certainly. Yeah,
because of all the reasons that we've spoken about before. But if the market value of players falls far enough, maybe it's something you can cope with a little better. But the obvious way to build your squad and to add depth to your squad is from your academy and is to use young players. Whereas previously you might have said, well, look, we've got a left back coming through. We're not 100% sure if he's going to make the grade or not. Look, maybe the safest thing for us to do is to go out and buy a player and know that he's at this level. We know he's at that level. Maybe he's not the greatest, but we know more or less what we're going to get from him, whereas playing a young player is a risk. That option could be well taken away, where now you have to say, well, we need some cover at left back. Are we going to spend £6 million or £12 million or whatever it might be on a player, plus wages, plus agents' fees, all of that kind of stuff? Are we going to spend that money when we could take a chance on a young player reaching the level, and if we've got a coach that we think can develop young players pretty well, then maybe that's the way it will go. So, yeah, I feel like there's going to be a fairly significant focus on young players, not just at Arsenal, but across the leagues.
And in some ways, I mean, that... I'm not going to say it lends us an advantage, but we are in a strong position in terms of the young talent we do have in our squad and the degree of experience they already have. There will be teams in the Premier League that can spend money, probably, Man City, potentially Newcastle. I'm sure they'll still be able to go out and conduct some business. But to have the likes of, Saka, Saliba from next season, Guendouzi, Willock, Nelson, Martinelli, and Nketiah. It's a long list of hopefuls, isn't it? Of players who've accumulated playing time and could be an important part of a squad, if not necessarily the stars. So yeah, I think that's in a weird way, I'm sort of happy that that's the route we're going to go down now. As a fan, I can connect with that and get on board with it, and I think it's exciting, and I think genuinely it could give us a slight competitive advantage against some of our rivals in terms of, if I look at, let's say, the Spurs squad, I'm not sure they've got the same exciting bunch of youngsters coming through, and they're going to have significant spending limitations. Yeah.
I mean, you look at what Chelsea are doing, they're sort of doing it already as well.
They
are.
They are.
And that was pre-lockdown and everything else. But yeah, no, it will be very interesting to see. And I'm hopeful about a lot of these players. And I think in the past, I wonder how many players who might, have broken through and maybe not quite hit the level for a couple of years because of the various stages of player development. Like, they're not all going to be great at 20. Some of them will break through and be precocious talents. Others might, the classic, what was the one they always said about Didier Drogba? He was playing in League Two until the age of 24.
Or something.
Lauren Koscielny, similarly, was a player who'd only had one season in the top flight in France before we signed him. There've been a few of those players who developed late, and maybe just having to stick with them will give them chances. So we will see. Okay, here is one from Davey JG, who says, I'm unsubscribed from all Arsenal accounts on social media. I'm tired of flashbacks to Invincible Highbury days and don't connect to this time due to age and living in New Zealand. Is there a split growing in the fan base, and is it a concern?
Interesting. I don't think that's a concern. I mean, look, everybody has lent into slightly retro content, haven't they, during this crisis?
Yeah.
And even we've done stuff or talked about things from the past. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. We were going to do the rewatch, weren't we, of 2002? Yeah. And I think that for some people, that is a big part of their fan experience, is kind of immersing themselves and learning that history, even if they don't necessarily have a memory of it. Kind of going back over that stuff and finding out about it is part of how some people do connect with the club. Clearly, in this instance, the listener, doesn't necessarily have that feeling. But I haven't really observed a split. Have you?
No, I don't think so. I just wonder if people are
saturated a bit,
or maybe just find it hard to rewatch stuff that they might have already watched. It's great to sort of relive the experiences. Yesterday, for example, was the 6th anniversary of the 2014 FA Cup final, which was an amazing day. We had a question from AFC Met, since it was 6 years since the 2014 FA Cup final. What was your favourite moment of that FA Cup run?
I'm going to have to look at the fixtures. 2014 FA Cup.
I think we...
Did we beat Spurs?
I think, was that the one where Rosicky scored the goal?
Yeah. Maybe not, but that's what I remember.
It was, because we beat Tottenham.
We beat Tottenham. Goals from Santi Cazorla and Thomas Rosicky gave Arsenal a 2-0 win. It's the game where Walcott went off and did the
2-0
hand gesture.
Yeah, it did his cruciate. But I mean, when you think
Liverpool as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. People go, oh, look, it was only Hull in the final, it was only Wigan in the semi-final, but we beat Tottenham, we beat Liverpool, and we beat Everton.
Yeah.
The Liverpool game, Yaya Sanogo started up front.
And Podolski scored the crucial goal, I believe, the second goal. The Kim Chalstrom penalty in the semi-final. That's a pretty iconic moment.
It surely is. I mean, look, I don't think your favourite moment can be anything other than the Ramsey goal. or the final whistle. Sanya,
Sure.
Wenger kissing the top of Sanya's head. Lukasz Fabianski coming out and doing his crazy fucking stuff.
Oh man! And nothing from the Wigan game was enjoyable. I mean, that was torture, wasn't it? That match, and I was more sure than I think I was at any other point prior in his reign that was going to be the end of us.
Oh yeah, no, I remember doing the live blog for that game. I remember sitting in a chair in front of the TV here and thinking, with 10 minutes to go, well, this is it. There's no way he could survive if we lose to Wigan. Just impossible, to have blown that chance of ending the trophy drought to what were Wigan in back then? They were in the Championship, I think.
I think they were a Championship team, just gone down the previous year, I think. But yeah, I mean, if it was something not from the final, I think you'd have to look back at the Spurs game and Rosicki's brilliant goal and Walcott's little gesture from the stretcher.
I do love that Rosicki goal. Was it Kyle Walker?
I think it was, or Danny Rose, maybe.
Oh, we're going to have to look at that again.
Well, it'll be a pleasure for you to do so.
Goal,
Someone stumbles on the ball. My head says Danny Rose, but I might be wrong.
I'm just looking at it here. Hang on, there might be volume here. Let me turn down the volume on the YouTube. Here we go. Oh, yeah, it's Danny Rose, isn't it?
I think because I enjoyed it was Danny Rose, because he obviously
it was Kyle Walker who was almost getting back to him.
Yeah, Danny Rose's dreadful error, according to the BBC.
Yeah, he's standing there doing that thing of holding up his shirt to his nose.
Oh, the ultimate sign of humiliation.
Yeah. So there you go. Anyway, yeah. But just in terms of the retro stuff and everything else, I don't know what else they're supposed to do. I mean, I suppose they could just do nothing.
Yeah, I guess.
I guess. But if it does give people a better or a deeper understanding of the history of the club and some of the achievements that we've had down the years, then I don't think there's anything wrong with it either, And I think, to be fair, the Arsenal guys, the social media guys and the content guys have made it pretty enjoyable, pretty interactive with with the interaction with fans and stuff like that. So,
and the stuff Wrighty's done, has been brilliant. So I think all in all, they've done a great job. It is interesting sort of noticing, for the first time, I'm sort of noticing generational gaps beneath me in terms of Arsenal fans. So I was always aware that, like, I wasn't around for 89, or, I don't remember Alan Sunderland in the FA Cup final. But I think now I'm noticing there is a kind of a group of fans who are sort of the generation below me who don't remember the Invincibles, and for whom, the Emirates Stadium is all they know. And that's kind of interesting to kind of observe that. But I don't sense a massive amount of resistance for them. I just sort of think the Invincibles have kind of been done to death a bit now, haven't they?
Yeah.
And I think we know that story, so people are want to look at different eras.
Plus, you're old now, James. You're old.
I'm old. I know, that's what I'm realising. I'm old.
Yeah.
34 in a month.
34, fuck's sake.
Terrible.
Now I feel really
It's my last contract.
One more
I want
year.
a 2-year deal.
One more year.
No, I want a 2-year deal somewhere.
2-year deal, okay.
I know I'm injury prone.
I'll have a word with your agent. We'll see what we can work out. Is it my turn? Yeah.
I think it's my turn.
Okay.
Let's have it's time for the Alexandre Lacazette question.
Okay.
So, Dumbledore's Gunt on the Discord, I like that name, says, thoughts on Lacazette huffing balloons again? Just a case of boredom in lockdown or a disregard for the club's authority, given he's been picked up on it before? #slow news day.
I mean, it's just a bit dim or something, isn't it?
How has he actually been perhaps doing it?
I think he
where's the image
filmed it himself, or one of his mates filmed it and then,
leaked it or something.
I mean, don't film yourself.
Yeah.
Don't film yourself. It's like the old mafia adage. When you whack a guy, don't film it and then upload it somewhere because it might be evidence. I think that was in The Sopranos, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty much a direct
The
quote,
Godfather.
as far as I recall.
Don't film when you whack the guy.
Whatever you do, If I'm doing balloons, don't film me. Yeah.
On this, the day of my daughter's ballooning. It just seems a bit stupid. Like, look, what he's doing isn't illegal, we should point out. And what they're doing is, it's laughing gas, isn't that right? It's nitrous oxide.
Nitrous oxide, yeah.
In a balloon, and it gives you like a bit of a head rush, apparently. Having never done a balloon filled with nitrous oxide in my life, I can't speak to how it...
Finally, my youth comes into use. I can explain. I only in medical circumstances, I must stress. As a star of children's television, I must stress that it was only in medical circumstances. But it's like a little buzzy head rush, exactly that.
Yeah. So
I mean, I don't care what Lacazette does. Just don't film yourself.
Look, I think you have an obligation, a professional obligation, to behave in a certain way when you're a footballer and a highly paid footballer. There's a responsibility that comes with it. But, let's not pretend that a guy sitting at home having a few huffs out of a balloon is that much worse than a guy who goes out at the weekend and, gets shit-faced in a nightclub drinking champagne or whatever it is. It's... Of course. They're both not great for you if you are a professional athlete. But usually... the guy in the VIP section of the nightclub is not filming himself glugging back champagne or doing Jaeger bombs or whatever it might be. You leave that till you're retired and you're Ray Parlour. And you sit there and you just, you list the amount of beers that you're going to drink and the various types.
I need to call Ray Parlour this week about a piece that I'm doing for The Athletic. And I keep thinking I'm going to have to call about 9 a.m. to get him, before he started drinking. I don't know. What do you think is a good time to call Ray Parlour?
I would say 10:15 in the morning.
Yeah. Because then he'll only have done, 2 Cobra bombs?
Fucking Cobra bombs. That's dropping a Jaeger into a glass of Cobra beer, right? And then sculling it down.
Correct.
Jagermeister, right? Here's my thesis, or what do you call it? My theory on Jagermeister.
Yeah.
It is a drink that was invented by all the other drinks to make sure that you drink more. Because if you drink Jagermeister, chances are you go, oh, I'm a bit tired, I'll have a couple of Jaegers, and then you're like, oh, look at this, I'm drinking a pint of rum. It's like, what the fuck? So I think it is,
Especially if combined with sickly sweet energy drink.
Oh, no, never done that. Never done that. Oh, really? No. I can't do disgustingly sweet energy drink. I just can't. Sure. It makes me... it's so sweet.
What about its rival, Monster?
I have never had a Monster in my life either. Ever.
They're terrifying. Yeah, they are pretty scary stuff.
I think
just if I drink one of those now... I get palpitations. I think I can feel my heart coming out of my chest. It's scary. Yeah. I have no interest in that anymore.
Yeah. I'm not great with energy drinks. So, yeah, I would say about 10:15 because he'll have had his morning workout, in the gym, come for a run, whatever it is he does to keep himself in shape. 3 hours of grueling workouts. And then I reckon, about 10:15.
Okay, 10:15.
You will be fine. What was the question? Oh, yeah, about Lacazette. Yeah, just don't film it, man. Don't film it.
Yeah, and also, I'm sure during the season, I know it's technically the season now, but, it's not really, is it? I mean, he's going out of his mind. It's not good.
Clearly he is with all those balloons he's been sucking on. It's off his fucking box. He's sitting there fucking hallucinating. Yeah. Looking at the walls. Oh, look at this fucking shit, man. It's fucking great. Is that a camera pointing at me? No, it can't be. It is. It's one of your so-called friends. They're going to sell it to the tabloids.
It's been uploaded to an Instagram story. Shit.
Take it down. It's too late. It's out there.
Yeah. I mean, look, naughty boy, don't do it again. But obviously, he was told that once before and he did it again.
All right, look, we've got one final question here because we're going to have to go. It comes from Oisin O'Connor, who's at Arsenal 97. He said, would you rather be only able to whisper or only be able to shout?
Oh, whisper, I think.
Yeah.
I think whisper.
What if, though, let me just play out a scenario here for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going for a hike in the mountains in America.
Seems unlikely, but I'll go with it.
Yeah, go with it. I'm just painting the scenario. You can dismiss it afterwards if you like.
Okay.
So you're going along and you're having a great old time, and you're in the kind of dusty mountains of around the Grand Canyon and shit like that. The ones with the red rocks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, we're going back to the whole James Franco thing here because he was in this film. So
okay,
you're going along and you go through a little crevice and a rock falls on your arm and you're trapped.
Oh, no.
It's like that film Army Trappy Guy, 127 Hours. That's what it's called.
Yes.
Johnny Armtrap. So you're Johnny Armtrap.
I'm Johnny Armtrap in this movie.
You're Johnny Armtrap and you're there and you're going, oh, fuck. I know about this because I saw a movie. Pretty much my only way out of this is if I cut my own arm off with a penknife. That's going to be really painful and sore. Hang on, though. I'll try and attract some attention and get some help. So you brace yourself and you go, help. Help me. There's a rock on my arm. Yeah. It's really sore. And I'm afraid. Please help me. That would be...
Sounds terrifying.
That would be unfortunate. Whereas if you, perhaps, in that scenario, were to go, help! A passing hiker, a fellow hiker, would have heard you and would just happen to have had a crowbar on him because he was just fixing a car. Or breaking into a car, actually, before he came on his hike. And he would have been able to get the crowbar and get the rock off your arm, and you'd be Johnny Two Arms rather than Johnny Arm and a Half.
It's a good point. Why doesn't James Franco just shout in the film?
I think he does, and there's nobody around.
So it's not a foolproof strategy.
It's not foolproof. What if
the other side of the coin, I was at a social function and I'd had too many Cobra bombs.
Right.
And I defecated in my trousers because I was so ill from all the drinking. And I needed to make my excuses. And a friend said, "Why are you leaving?" And I just wanted to tell them. But then I shouted, "I've had so many Cobra bombs, I've shit myself!" Like, do you know what I mean? Like, really loud across the whole room.
I guess that would be an unfortunate situation.
That feels more likely to happen than me going mountain climbing.
Right.
So I will stick on that basis with the whisper.
With the whisper.
And I'll become an ASMR. Is it ASMR? Like one of those creepy little people who does those videos.
You have to talk and make sure you enunciate all the words.
Yeah, it's actually really quite weird. I had a 2-day spell where I couldn't sleep, and I downloaded an ASMR podcast, and I can't remember what it's called for the life of me because I was like, someone said that's good to help you sleep, and it was just someone reading the Wikipedia entry for dwarfs in fiction.
Gimli was a little dwarfy cunt with a big hammer.
Yeah. Snow White had 7 of the little cunts living in her house.
There was Grumpy, Twitchy. Oh no, that's Harry Redknapp. Sorry.
Yeah. No, honestly, it was a bloke just going, in Germanic mythology, a dwarf is a human-shaped entity that dwells in mountains and in the earth. And I must have had the most fucked up dreams that night. Like, I don't know.
Did it help though? Did it help you get to sleep?
Oh, of sorts, yeah.
Right.
Of sorts. I think I continued it for about 3 days, and then I think I was like, this is weird. This is actually really weird.
Well, look, this is another avenue that we can go down if football just doesn't come back in the way that we want it to. We can do ASMR podcasts about dwarves.
That'd be great.
Oh, we might have to do a different one because dwarves has obviously been taken.
Sure, we'll find goblins or something like that.
Wasps.
Wasps.
Wasps are little cunts that fly around and sting you like
Listen,
fuckers.
you've got a good microphone. You could do this. This could be another avenue.
I could, yeah.
Don't try it with AirPods, guys. It won't.
No, it won't work. I could do bespoke ones, like answering machine ones and stuff like that, like ringtones.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Like
no one would hear it.
Crazy Frog.
Is your phone on silent? Sort of.
Ring. Ring.
That'd be terrifying. What the fuck is that?
All right, well, look, we will leave it there for today. Thank you very much for being with us as always. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll have more bits and pieces during the week, and of course, we'll get more news on when football might return. Premier League are having a meeting today. They should arrange the return to training protocols in which all the players, they're only allowed to whisper at each other. Switch.
Whispering, but they can't get more than 2 meters away from each other, so it's really tough, actually.
It's going to be hard. Hopefully they can overcome the challenges. Again, thanks a million for being here. We will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.